I've had the opportunity over the last 40 years of teaching and sharing some of the most beautiful nuggets of truest truth, the real gold wisdom nuggets of our ancestors. And it's been such a beautiful thing to share that with hundreds of thousands of people and on national television, I don't know how many millions. But the thing that is more precious to me are the thousands and the hundreds of being with them face to face and assisting them and their families to overcome so many disease conditions that they were taught by their doctors was an ongoing, never-ending thing. That they would be on, for instance, thyroid medications for the rest of their lives, that they are diabetic, and once you're diabetic you can never heal it, or cancer. It's so fascinating to me that the Physicians Committee of Responsible Medicine, a good friend of mine, Neil Bernard, announced to the world that diet is the #1 component when it comes to cancers. Another friend, Dr. Mitchell Gaynor, he's over New York Strand Cancer Clinic. He's a hematologist, molecular biologist at Cornell. He tells people, we've seen the future of cancer research, and the future is the study of whole foods. And I've believed that all my life, and I have shared that all my life, and I've seen thousands of people overcome stage 3 and stage 4 cancers on their own, doing it themselves, not me, them. Simply having the courage to embrace principles of self-care, understanding the foods and how they target the 7 systems of the human body. And a lot of people have asked, how did you get into this, Don? And it comes down to this. When I was a kid, I was about 8.5 years old, I'd been invited to go to Sunday school by 3 little buddies. They'd invited me every single Sunday for over 3 years. I finally caved in and went once. Heard a story about a King Nebuchadnezzar that he'd conquered most of the known world. He gathered up young people, wanted to pull them into a 3-year encampment. He was going to feed them the best foods right off the menus that his own chefs would prepare him daily. He wanted to give them the best of the sweetmeats and the dainties and the other things that he had. He was going to teach them the tongue of the Chaldeans. He was going to have his learned men teach these kids his sciences. At the end of 3 years, he was going to interview all of them, and from those extrapolate the few that would sit in Senate Council and help him to rule his empire. Well, it's interesting because there were 4 kids, according to this story, that refused the king's meat and dainties, would not eat the king's food and the foods that the chefs would prepare. And instead they requested, according to the King James Version of the Bible that this Sunday school teacher was reading out of, and I know there's hundreds of versions, but that was the one she was reading from. A lot of religious scholars believe that it's one of the most poetic and perfectly translated. But it said that these 4 kids, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused the king's food and requested instead pulse. And if you go back into 1611, when those scriptures were retranslated under King James, the monks chose the word pulse to represent the movement and electric life force of the cosmos. They believed that meal that these 4 boys was talking about contained, because of the numbers of foods and the measures of the foods in ratio to one another, that it was one of the most profoundly healing and maintaining life force meals on the face of the earth. Well, they consented these kids, they just give them pulse, not have them eat the chef's and king's foods for 10 days, but if they got sick looking, they'd have to eat the king's food, and that was that. At the end of 10 days, it says they were brighter in their countenance and stronger in their flesh than anyone else in the camp, which was fascinating to me. At the end of the 3 years, this record goes on to say that these 4 kids that ate nothing but pulse and drank just water were 10 times better and more intelligent than the king's own learned men. And so they continued with the king up to the time of King Cyrus. Later in my studies, I found out that would have made Daniel about 106 years old at that time. In my studies, I found out that Daniel and Pythagoras of the Pythagorean Academy were friends. They were both Olympic wrestlers. and scholars, meaning observers of nature. But I wanted to find out what that meal was. I wanted to know, what were the foods in it? How did you prepare it? What do you do? And so as I got into it, I spent 17 years, put on 4 million air miles. I climbed through dusty old catacombs. I went to bibliotheques, museums, rare book collection libraries all over the world. And I lived amongst, I guess, close to 18 cultures, trying to find from them the wisdom of nuggets which they had that may lead me to finding this meal. After 17 years, I'd learned some of the most precious things about health and about living and about sharing within a community and being happy and healthy, and that the real purpose of life, the real purpose, is pleasure and happiness. That's the purpose and intention of being. And I believe that with all my heart from what I've seen and what I've experienced in my own lifetime and being with others. But it was fascinating. I finally gave up looking for the meal 2 years later after I'd quit in an accidental meeting with a very wealthy man in Washington, D.C. I found his own, one of the largest privately held collections on the face of the earth of ancient arcane artifacts. It was through this accident meeting and conversing with him and joking and having fun. He actually asked me if I would like a job at the collection to uncrate, to open up, to catalog, and to display the collection that had been put together since the 1600s. And they had done nothing with it other than store it in buildings. And what an opportunity. I quit my job with Pitney Bowes and Xerox Corporations as an international sales trainer. And I did it. 2 months into it, I opened a box. There was a scroll inside. There were receipts. The family purchased it from the British Museum. A receipt showing the British Museum had gotten it as a gift from the Church of England. The Church of England actually got that scroll as a gift from the Church of Rome, as a peace offering between those two factions in one period of time. There was a manuscript rolled up that was a translation of the scroll, done by a man by the name of Leadbeater and his team of scholars. I opened it up. I hadn't thought about pulse for 2 years. I'd put that behind me and moved on. As I turned the first page and started to read, the hairs on my arms stood up and up my neck and onto my head. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. As I turned to the second page, I was crying. I realized from the vernacular and the vocabularian that had been used in this translation, I had found what it was I was looking for. It turned out to be 42 pages about that meal, about the mathematical ratios of phi and pi, and the 5 shapes that all of nature forms itself into, and the measures of those foods and why they were chosen, and that meal, when it was put together, represented the complete 5-pointed star of the human body. All of the 7 systems, its health, its maintenance, and the magnification of capacity of the function of the cells and the increased function of what today we would call the neurochemistry of the cognitive process of the brain. I was so blown away. He would not sell me the scroll. He would not even let me handwrite a copy of the translation. So I asked him if I could memorize it. And he laughed and said, sure, why not? He didn't realize that's what I would do. I memorized those 42 pages and recorded them at home after I'd gotten off work. It talked about the 7 mouths of 7 witnesses that affirmed the efficacies and the inspiration behind that meal. And one of those things was the signum natura in the Latin, meaning signs of nature, that every food has a sign of its nature. That a walnut, with its shell, looks like the cranial cap of the brain, a left and right hemisphere, upper cerebrums, lower cerebellums, quadrants, just like the brain. That it has wrinkles on the surface of a walnut, just like the neocortex with its convoluted juridic folds. And today they know that walnuts really are brain food. They knew that thousands of years ago. Today they know that tomatoes are good for the heart, and a heart is red and has chambers. Slice a tomato, red and has chambers. Heart food. Strawberries, heart food. And it's so fascinating. Celery looks like a bone, snaps like a bone. Now they know that celery has 21% phytolytic or plant sodium. It's what the bone uses to replace and to heal itself. Celery helps to overcome osteoporosis according to observational studies that have been done, and the results that people have gotten through their own self-care of eating celery 3 or 4 stalks a day or juicing them into a smoothie with other foods. It's fascinating. Kidney beans. It's no accident we call them kidney beans. They target the kidneys, their function, and healing and repair. There's a part of the brain called the amygdala. That's Latin for almonds. Now they know that's what almonds do. They target that part of the brain and emotional balance and capacities of function. It's so interesting as you go deeper into this. Mushrooms. They have a signature of the thyroid. Mushrooms have the highest natural occurring incidence of plant iodine. You can actually heal the function of the thyroid, and we even have videos of people who grew their thyroid back after having had it surgically removed. They get off the thyroxine and other drugs, and they eat mushrooms, and they're just fine. Diabetics target the pancreas. The pancreas develops glucagon and insulin. Don't eat refined and artificial sweeteners and sugars. The molecules are so small, it throws the body into chaos, and the body pumps out insulin to bring it down into lethargy and to make you tired, to get you to lay down layers of fat, to protect you because the body's in chaos from the toxicity of the refined sugars and artificial sweeteners. Eat the sugar that is in fruit. The large molecules create balance and energy in the body, and the pancreas produces glucagon to energize you and to add splendor and energy all through your house. Look at a sweet potato, a yam. It's the pancreas. And there are other foods that do that as well. As you go through this e-praxis message, you're going to learn more about whole foods and what it was that was specifically done to assist Jennifer Ritchie in the recovery of her digestive system, the electrical function of the musculoskeletal system, and the brain, and that brain stem to get it to regrow and reconnect. There are foods that target stored fat cells and activate other cells to act like stem cells in healing and growth and repair. Welcome to e-praxis and the knowledge that is so precious that for the most part has been lost, but individuals is bringing back through gaining the results of embracing these things and getting to the healing that they so deserve and so want.